This is the first time you and I have spoken, like where you could see me and I could see you since Kevin Sullivan passed away.
Yeah, right.
Friend of the show, friend of mine, friend of yours for a much longer time. I mean, you've known Kevin for
Wow.
how long?
Well, I first met Kevin in 90 and 80, 83.
So for over 40 years.
Right. The first Starcade.
Wow.
Yeah. So
It's
that's
just amazing to me that, his legacy goes back. I mean, even beyond that. I mean, this is a guy who was not only a great in-ring performer, but learned psychology and booking and finishes and all that from Eddie Graham, and then
right.
had such an incredible run with WCW, but certainly a mover and a shaker behind the scenes with ECW. And then, the architect of all that NWO heat. I don't know that Kevin Sullivan these days has been given his proper flowers, as the kids would say. What do you think about that, Tony?
No, I don't think he has been. I think people look at and they look at WCW, and a lot of them do think of the great days that we had in the mid '90s. But a lot of them say, yeah, but it was lousy, and they think of the late days when Kevin was no longer the booker. But during the great runs of the NWO and Hulk Hogan and Hall and Nash, Kevin was the guy that put together those television shows. Kevin was the guy who came in after Dusty was let go by Eric Bischoff and started booking and did a phenomenal job. And Kevin, his production meetings were kind of loose. He didn't really give away much during his production meetings as far as what was on the card. You kind of found that out a little bit later on when you talked to him in privately. But Kevin was just a solid person, a phenomenal mind of the business. Now he also did write all the Dungeon of Doom stuff, which people have certainly panned or shit on. But no, there is no doubt that Kevin was the source behind all of that because Kevin was bizarre. I mean, the Taskmaster and all the devil stuff, and we even called him Devil all
Yes.
the way up until the day he died. That was his nickname for all of us, Devil. So, but Kevin was a good guy, and not only that, you may have seen some matches throughout history with Kevin Sullivan, and you would think, that's a little rough. You damn right it was a little rough. Kevin was pretty much a shooter in the ring as well. So it's he's going to be missed on many many levels. And what breaks my heart is that, and you and I talked, and I didn't really know he had been hurt. Didn't really know he had a GoFundMe page. I didn't realize any of this. It just and that's my fault for not being up to date with what's going on today online because as you know, I try to stay away from all that. But it breaks my heart that I didn't at least talk to him when he was, uh in his later years. I did talk to him when AEW started, and he and I talked about AEW starting, and what was it he told me one time about AEW? Uh Something. He had an opinion about AEW. I remember, and his opinion. I remember his opinion being that's pretty damn good. And then I'm thinking, well, that's just Kevin Sullivan. He knows what he's talking about.
Right.
He was a booker from the old school, right? He really was, and a tough guy. And my God, I saw on your Twitter feed what the Boston Red Sox did for him.
Yes.
Was that not wonderful or what?
It's one of the greatest things I've seen this year. I
Right.
mean, if you knew Kevin, you knew what a huge fan he was of the Red Sox. And for him to see, obviously he didn't see it, but I got to think somewhere he knew that his name was on that scoreboard. That's a cool little thing they pulled together.
I thought it was great, and I've never cared for the Red Sox, being a Yankees fan. Yik yik. But I have a lot of love for them now after what they did for Kevin Sullivan, who just, I mean, the Red Sox, that was his passion. He was from the Boston area. His passion was not the Patriots, was not the Celtics. It was the Boston Red Sox. And in his later years, after we finished, And I did get to see Kevin, and I got to see Kevin. You know, he did a couple of things with MLW with us. That's all he wanted to talk about was baseball and the Red Sox. So hopefully, as I said in my tweet, he's up there talking to Ted Williams or someone up there about the Red Sox. So tough, tough to see your friends pass away. It really is.
You mentioned how maybe critically the whole Taskmaster and Dungeon of Doom stuff wasn't well received. But if you talk to Kevin about, hey man, what was up with the Dungeon of Doom? That was terrible.
Yeah.
He made it pretty clear that Hogan wanted to only work with a handful of guys, and those happened to be his friends. So if you're going to have Hulk Hogan there and he wants to work with his friends, as Kevin said, something along the lines of, would you rather see those guys spread out throughout a show or in the same segment and get it over with? And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
wow, I never really considered that.
Right.
He felt like, hey, man, Hogan's the top guy. We got to take care of him. But at the same time, we don't have to take over the whole show. We got a Hogan segment and then we got everything else. What do you make of that?
Yeah. I really actually agreed with almost everything that Kevin did. Almost everything. I remember I was there for every shooting of the Dungeon of Doom. We did it in a warehouse in Florida without air conditioning near Hogan's house. And it was freaking miserable. And King Curtis sat in that throne all day and did not move, did not get up, did not stretch his legs. And we had a chance to, it was so hot and so miserable in there and such a hot box that even walking outside in the sun cooled you off. And I remember Kevin kind of going over things and things he wanted to do, and he would listen to Hulk Hogan, and he would give Hulk his advice, and Hulk pretty much would take his advice on what Kevin thought worked and didn't work. To me, that was kind of an extension of Kevin Sullivan's mind, just weird shit, and that's how Kevin thought. And Kevin was able to finally take that weird shit and make it into a segment on the show with some money, some effort put into it, and some effects and everything. And Hulk really, really believed in it. It also came back, if you'll recall, it almost harkened back to the days of Hulkamania when he was kind of an action figure for the kids,
Yes.
and it didn't play as well during that current time in the mid '90s as it would have in the early '80s or '83, '84 when Hulkamania first started. So it was more like it was almost like a cartoon come to life, right? I mean, uh, so, but yeah, Kevin knew what he was doing. I agree with that. And I agree with you have to look at the entire show, and uh, you have to. I remember there was a segment of the Dungeon Do, and I think it was a segment where the giant appeared, and Eric was so mad at me and Eric got mad at me a lot, but then again, fuck it. So Eric said, the giant attacks Hulk Hogan and you basically ignore it. You basically fucking ignore it. I said, no, hang on a second. I said, I didn't ignore it, but why don't you tell me how much of the show you want me to take up with talking about it? He said, well, he's our biggest star and he was just attacked. And the only thing you said was, oh my God, we're hoping Hulk Hogan is okay. I said, I mean, dude, where ought to go from there? Right. I don't know. And, but I remember being entertained by him, and I remember Kevin being a big part of what we were doing. So, yeah, God bless him.